Hello, good day, guys. Today we'll be doing this simple top-down analysis on GBPUSD. A quick breakdown from the higher time frame down to the lower time frame. Today is Wednesday, and you could take action from this analysis for tomorrow's Thursday and what you could expect for tomorrow's analysis. So the first things first, you start from the higher time frame. So in this case, I'm starting from the 4 hours time frame, which is my higher time frame, and we'll find our main push, and from there we use the internal structure to understand where we are in price action to read the story. So from the 4 hours time frame, this is my main push to the downside. This lower high that made this lower low, we made a bearish break of structure to the downside. Now I don't need to know much about what happens on the left. That will be analysis for another day. I don't want this video to be too long, but just a brief um reminder. We tap into a higher time frame supply zone there, and we led to a bearish break of structure. We mitigate its supply, the decisional supply, and we led to another bearish break of structure. So this is my main push because we led to a full break of structure to the downside. Now this becomes my main push, this high here and this low here. So whatever happens within there will be my internal structure. And what could we be expecting? We could be expecting at some point it goes down to make a new lower low. So that will be our market structure read. And for this point here, we'll go down to the internal structures to read more details. So at this point here, what I can clearly see on the 4 hours time frame before going down to the 1 hour time frame and read more structure is that we spot our decisional supply that led to the break of structure, because this supply here was the decisional supply that led to the break of structure that made the bearish break of structure. And we have our extreme, which is somewhere around here. We'll do that when we go down to the lower time frame, but at this point I mark this zone as my supply zone. Why? Because I mark it as my extreme because it's actually swept liquidity and led to this break of structure. So this actual trend, that this bearish trend that begin after we hit the higher time frame supply, was because of this inducement bearish break of structure. So I mark that zone as my supply, and everything around here is just mitigation. I consider them liquidity. So now that we know our extreme supply, which is up here, and our decisional supply, which is down here, we can now go down to the lower time frame and read more structures. So going down to the 15-minute time frame, I kind of have network issues. So on the 15-minute time frame, what can we clearly see at this point? What I can see is that once we have that bearish break of structure to the downside, we had internal structures, right? Oh, come on. We had internal structures, as this was the lower high that made the last lower low. We came to the decisional supply. So I refined this decisional supply zone because we actually came and tapped in on the imbalance here that led to the another break of structure. We actually tried to sell, but we missed. So that's not the point here. The point is that we actually made another internal break of structure. So after we swept this low here, swept this demand zone, previous this low, we had a very strong bullish reaction to the upside, where we actually took out those liquidity, trendline liquidity around here. We actually took that liquidity. As you can see, we made an inducement, but it didn't follow through because we, coming to the New York session, we actually had an inducement in our key time window that led to a buy trade that we took during the New York session. So coming to current price action now, what I can see is that the internal structure is now bullish, because once we have this inducement build up, inducement bullish push out, price broke that structure, and the decisional supply there was also broken to the upside. So currently now our internal structure on the 50-minute time frame becomes bullish to this high here, wherever it is. That's not too important now because this will be analysis for tomorrow. I'm just preparing you guys for the directional bias, or what we could expect and how we could trade, buys or sell accordingly. So right now, the zone that price is reacting from, we look at it and what do we see? We can see that it was already mitigated. We already had a break of structure, pullback, build up, inducement into that supply there that led to a break of structure. As you can see, we have mitigation, order flow, build up, inducement into supply, bearish break of structure. As you can see, build up right here, inducement into the supply here, and that bearish break of structure. As you can see, we have bearish order flow right here, and order flow after a break of structure is liquidity. And there is no strong sign that shows me that price is going to reverse. What I can say is we could have some temporary moves from this supply zone to give us a bit of reaction and then fail. So currently right now, this will be my demand zone. This will be my immediate demand zone to follow the bullish trend. So maybe we could come to this supply, this extreme supply that I explained, and from there we could have a bearish push, another bearish push to the downside. Now this supply is important. The reason I like it is because we had a run of liquidity here. We induced this previous smart money trap because this is also a build up, an inducement that led to a break of structure. People will be looking to sell here, and price can give them a bit of reaction and then takes them out with this move. Give them a reaction, takes them out, and led to the low. And what I can also see clean is that we have a trend line liquidity that was also forming right here. One touch, two touch, three touch. The trend line has three touches, and price induced into that supply there that led to the bearish break of structure. So that's why I like the supply zone, and I consider it as my extreme supply. So we could be trending bullish until we hit that supply zone, and from there we could continue bearish. So there are various roadmaps that we could follow that I'm going to share with you on this video for tomorrow's analysis. Now, the first roadmap that I'm most likely interested in is this supply give us a bearish reaction, right? A bearish reaction to the downside. Then once we hit this demand zone, maybe um Frankfurt open, we sweep this demand zone right here. We tap into our demand and we have a bullish break of structure, and maybe from there we could look for continuation trades to the upside. So this is just roadmaps for tomorrow's analysis. Then we continue that bullish structure to the upside to hit that supply zone that I'm talking about. Or maybe tomorrow we have a London sweep of these highs. Maybe we sweep these highs into that small supply, but you have to know that whatever reaction we have from these supply zones are going to be temporary. So maybe we have a reaction and that we swept maybe Frankfurt open high that give us a break of structure. Then we can look for sales, maybe back down into this demand, and maybe New York session we can look for buys to the upside. So there are various roadmaps. So what I'm just going to say also to avoid is once you see a break of structure around here, you have to be careful because this could easily be a trap for buyers. And if you are not aligning yourself with internal structure correctly and using the roadmaps, the daily cycle, right, you could eventually get trapped at this zone thinking this is a break of structure to the downside, and this is actually a liquidity sweep that we could actually maybe look for buys to the upside to take out that zone. So you have to be careful and wait for London open. If this is a Frankfurt break of structure, then you have to look again because this is most likely going to be a trap. So what I'm saying also is because these supply zones are all mitigated, they are all mitigated, and the current trend actually now is bullish. So until this bullish structure fails, you can actually say you have now switched bearish. So you have to see this bullish structure fail. Now this is also a very very nice demand zone because it swept liquidity. They didn't tag me in, but it's a very nice demand zone because it made a medium inducement that led to a bullish push out. Now you also have to be careful because once we have mitigated a supply zone and we started coming bearish, you have to know that whatever reaction you are having from this demand zone is going to be temporary, and the greater trades are going to be the sales that you take. So also take notes on that. What I also want to share with you is you need to wait for time window, right? I can also share another uh, roadmap with you where price may be coming bearish, right? You may be coming bearish like this, and maybe you sweep high and then you started coming down into a demand zone during the London Open. Now, after sweeping this liquidity, or maybe previous this high, maybe we sweep this high, this become a previous this high, which is today's high, and maybe after sweeping it, you have a bearish reaction, you came to a demand level here. Now you have to be careful for not buying it from this demand zone because you are thinking price is now bullish, right? So you have to be careful because once you have a medium inducement of previous this high or something like that, any kind of inducement, price will most likely trap you as the early buyers, and boom, you see that the sellers took control, and you eventually took a loss on this trade here, and price will eventually come down, and maybe during the New York session will continue bullish. So there are various roadmaps that we will need to align ourselves with the lower time frames. So you have to wait for Asian session to play, Frankfurt Open to play, and you look for those roadmaps, you look for those daily cycle that will align with structure. So right now, the most and important structure for me that I'm seeing is the buys. We are seeing the buys because there are a lot of liquidity around this trend line, around these supply zones right here. There are a lot of orders there, and this unmitigated supply zone is a very big target for me right now. And that's all for now. Go back to the 4 hours time frame, and those roadmaps could play out, and we could play around these zones for like the rest of the week. But you have to be careful, and you have to know that we are still in a bearish market. So whenever you see that the bullish market, this bullish market that we found now, failed, then you start looking for sales, right? You need to look for those sales, those higher time frame sales. It could come from this supply zone here, going to make a new lower low, and it could also come from anywhere around this zone after sweeping this liquidity. So that will be all for now, and thanks for watching.